Welcome to those that have joined. Happy to have you here this week on our session. Happy to be joined by Derek Taylor, who leads our dental division. And he's our guru in all things dental. So glad to have you back, Derek.
Thanks, Kate. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so this week we're going to chat about dental benefits verification. We're coming up on the end of the year. Obviously, this is going to be top of mind for a lot of dental groups. So let's jump right in. I think it would be good if we just started, Derek, by, what is dental benefits and eligibility verifications? It can be a little bit different than medical. So if you could walk us through that, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. So I know quite a few of you that are here listening probably already have a basic understanding of this, but just in case you don't, let me just walk you through what this looks like. So, most patients when they go to the dentist, they're using some sort of third-party plan or payer that's offsetting some or most of the cost associated with the dental care. Those plans, every plan will have their own rules and levels and prices and what they cover, what they don't, that is specific to the plan. And different payers will set up very specific and customized plan or plans for different companies. So your employer might negotiate a particular plan that's unique to your office. And so for that plan and group, it has certain percentages and certain caps and certain inclusions that are specific to the dental benefits that are provided for those who are in that specific plan. And so because there is this variation in what's covered and what's not in a lot of different groups, we want to make sure that the patient has coverage before we move forward with thing, and that's what we call eligibility. The second is to find out what kind of coverages are available on this plan, specifically for every patient in this plan has X coverage on what this percentage on that or this dollar amount on this. So what those specific coverages are, and then the third part is what of those benefits have been used in the calendar year by the patient. Because, let's say some of these are, I've already gone to a different dentist, I've moved, I'm now transferring to a new dental office. That history is important because something that looks like it's covered in benefits may have already been used, or they might already have exceeded some sort of limit or cap. So that's basically what the benefits, when we talk about eligibility benefits, that's what we're looking at.
Great. What are the components involved in benefits and eligibility verification?
Okay, great. So first off, there's just the simple eligibility checks, as I mentioned. Some third-party plans incorporate those into an electronic submission where you can, your practice management software may allow you to just do a quick check on a patient, where it puts out the patient's information electronically and gets a confirmation of active coverage or not. Otherwise, you go to the payer websites, and most payer websites are very user-friendly with regards to an eligibility check. So you'll go on and you'll see, you just want to make sure that they have active coverage. If the coverage is no longer active, it'll normally indicate that it has expired or that it termed at what the date is when it ended. So that's that first level. The second level is what benefits there are available. So occasionally, there are some clearinghouse sources, or some of the payers are a little bit more helpful in getting some sort of electronic information on the general benefits. And then they have their web pages, which for a lot of the general broad categories of benefits, you're able to go in and see, so the very basic benefit verification, most of that information you can get online. And then additional, more specific detailed benefit information oftentimes requires phone calls. So some of this payer sites are a little bit more user friendly and typing in very specific treatment codes, or some of those more specific detailed questions on each group. But a lot of the websites are not very user friendly, or they don't have that information available, and you supplement with phone calls on behalf of the patient.
So now that we've talked a little bit about what's involved, we know that there's kind of two different forms, right, of benefits checks. So can you talk a little bit more about what the difference is between simple versus detailed verification?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think to kind of make this a little bit more, and to kind of get a little bit more specific on this, I'm going to share real quick my screen, and show this is a sample breakdown of benefits. Are you able to see that? Okay, Kate. So excuse it, it's a little bit small in font, but this kind of gives you an example. So most dental offices will have some sort of an eligibility and breakdown of benefits form that they build out, that's specific to that practice. The doctors want certain information on every new admission. So kind of that first category here is really general information. The patient's name, the insurance, what payer details, basically that stuff that comes on your dental benefits card, as well as the location, where's the patient going to be seen if it's a multiple office practice. The second area down here is what we call your eligibility, which really, walks you through some of the general things, your annual maximums, your individual coverages. So this is some of the very general patient benefit information for this particular plan and group. And then after that, you'll see the general coverages, and this is what we think of a lot of times when we think of benefits is, okay, preventatives covered at 100%, basics at 80, major, endodontics, oral surgery, those kind of things, right? And so most of the time, up to this point here, is what I would refer to as like a basic, meaning that you're not diving into a lot of specific coverages, any specific treatments. You're not diving into patient history. You're just wanting a quick swipe of, do we have the patient billing information? Do they have an active plan? And what are the general coverage details for that plan? And these can be found, most websites will have all of this information, and some of the clearinghouses will be able to pull, depending on the payer. Some are able to pull most of this, some are able to pull half of this information. So that's really when I refer to a basic benefits inquiry, that's what I'm referring to. So then what's in an advanced? So as we kind of keep coming down here, you see that we're reaching an area called frequency, coverages, and limitations. So let me kind of tab down here. So you're starting to get in a lot more of like the details on different x-rays, and the different types of scaling and planing of, different crowns and bridges, or, basically, if you notice all of these treatment codes, these are specific codes that this is an actual sample benefit information from one of our groups. And so these are all codes that their particular providers, they want to make sure they know on sealants and fluoride and, all of those secondary treatment options, to know what those are, to, if they can upgrade or downgrade, if they need to downgrade their fillings. So you can.
Sorry, folks, looks like Derek got kicked off. He'll reconnect in just a second and we'll resume.
I am so sorry. My computer just gave me the blue screen of rebooting.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Are you able to hear me on I'm just calling into my phone real quick while it's rebooting. Are you able to hear me, Kate?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So sorry about that. So, so basically it goes into a lot more detail as to the very specific services that can be done, as well as I didn't get to quite share the bottom, but it goes into patient history. So what of all of these benefits, what has been used so far on in the calendar year for that specific patient? And so all of that together is what we would call a full benefits investigation.
Got it. That makes sense. What practical applications or advice do you have on where to use simple versus detailed benefits investigations?
Yeah, so this really is something that you'd have to weigh with regards to your office and your practice type. So you kind of have, you know, two main there's pros and cons of both. So a front end full benefits, you know, takes more time. You're going to be investing on the front end to do a full on a new plan, new calendar year, new patient. It typically takes about 40 minutes a patient to get all that information in there. If you do a simple basic one, that's typically, you know, 10 minutes. Now, but the trade-off for it is if you do just the basic, when a patient comes in, you're going to be having to make some assumptions and guesses. You're going to be guessing on exactly what percentage is going to be covered in some of the things, or which treatments are covered. Well, generally they do this. And so if you're looking at price estimates or treatment plans that you're really trying to give your patient a really good projection, oftentimes you don't have all that information available. And so your price quotes, your treatment plans, you might have to either sometimes end up charging the patient more than you anticipated on the back end, or having to adjust on the back end where you've overcharged a patient. But you know, a lot of times you'll get in there and you're running that risk that you see that there's, you know, general coverage in this area, and then when you finally go to bill it, they're like, oh, they've already used that previously because you didn't check the history, and then there's no coverage. And so a lot of times as that trade-off, you end up writing off certain treatments as well, things that you've anticipated there being payment or you know, eligibility for, and then you're unable to do that. So the one other thing that I've heard from some of our offices as to why they do a detailed benefits investigation is to really maximize the benefits available while the patient's there for each visit. So you know, for example, on scaling and planing, you know, some of those specific questions, it's like, well, if you can do all 4 quadrants at one time, then you know that you'll get paid for all 4 quadrants, and you can maximize in one visit that full therapy. Where, you know, maybe you'd be limited just to 1 or 2 quadrants at a time. Or x-rays are a great example, right? Some of them will have those x-ray limitations, and some of them will allow you to do both, you know, various types of x-rays and have a higher interval. And so you can, you know, because you are aware of those actual benefits, the patient's happy because they're getting their benefits used. You're happy because you're able to get more revenue and take better care, take advantage of those, you know, with regards to your treatment plans and your care. And then also, like, sometimes you might be in you know, have a patient in the seat, and you see something like you know, something that was some, you know, a crown that needs to be repaired, or bridge or something. At your fingertips, you can look and see and say, oh, that this can be replaced every 3 years or every 5 years, and you have the history there, and so then you can you're in a position where you can really take advantage and you know, do it right then, or, you know, in that same time. So that's really you know, when you're looking at what the benefits are, that's what I hear on the positive side. But of course, you're investing in you know, doing that on the front end, so it costs you a little bit on the front end, right? So
Right.
all right.
Let's talk a little bit about technology.
Oh yes,
And
gotta love technology, right?
right, and what role technology can play
Yeah.
in supporting this process. You know, we know that it can't 100% take over, but it can certainly play a role. So if you could talk about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so unfortunately, you know, what we see on the dental side is a lot of the payers are not very friendly in getting us access to a lot of the data electronically. as a company, our company Infinix does healthcare services across a lot of different areas. And when we compare the dental information available and eligibility and benefits to, let's say, the medical or the pharmacy, or some of our other similar areas, dental is significantly more difficult to get access to that information electronically. And so there are some solutions out there that can help. And so from a technology standpoint, first off, like phone calls are the least effective and most time wasting way to gather the information. So first off, you want to make sure that when you're doing these benefit investigations, that you're doing it first of all, utilizing any sort of electronic or clearinghouse, or if your practice management software has any sort of benefit inquiry accessibility online, to use that first. Use that in your information gathering. And it's oftentimes limited, as I mentioned, but if you have it, might as well use it. At least pull in some of that information. The second is the websites. Familiarity with those websites, really trying to figure out, most of the time regionally, there's some major plans that you're going to be dealing with, and familiarizing yourself and training your employees to not just pick up the phone, to really go through and know what are what is available electronically. The other benefit with gathering things from the website where you can is that it eliminates one of the human components. When you're doing phone calls, like anyone who's really done this over time, they'll find that different representatives will sometimes give you different answers. And that's very frustrating. It's a he said, she said, confusing, what's really the answer. And so when you're dealing with the websites, that at least you have that tangible evidence and documentation. We even have some clients that on some of the more important benefit information, they'll take screenshots of the websites, right? Just to have that proof. Whereas on the call side, going through and auditing recorded calls, that kind of stuff's a lot of work. So, I would say, definitely look at the efficiencies, right? So any sort of electronic submission clearinghouse, take advantage of that. Second would be, the websites, to really make sure you're trying to get, take full. And it seems like each year, most plans are adding a little bit more functionality to the website. It's not anywhere near as fast as we'd like, but to take full advantage of that. And then on the phone call side, be efficient when you're calling by gathering all the other information ahead of time. You're going to limit your phone calls just to the very specifics that you were not able to get on the website. So it'll make your calls more efficient, and try to keep you on the phone a little less time.
Awesome. So we talked about detailed benefits verifications and kind of the differences there. Is there an opportunity and ways that detailed benefits verifications can improve ROI?
Yeah. So and I did kind of mention that. So when you're looking at the efficiency of, patients per patient visit, how much revenue you're able to generate per patient visit, having full detailed benefit information on the front end before the patient comes in really allows you to maximize what benefits you can provide as you're developing your treatment plan for the patient. So I think if it's done right, if you have all the information ahead of time and your team is using and accessing that information, there is a benefit there in that you'll be able to get more revenue because you're able to provide more services and benefits to the patient. If the information's there and you're not referencing it, or if you don't get the information there in time, then obviously it's not going to be helpful. But having that, and the other part to it is making sure that information's updated in the system as well. So within each practice management software, they have, all of the different billing fields that indicate, what the different, what kind of, patient benefits have been used so far, how much remains. it has the patient history where the fields are very specific. Some of the plans, even like you can, when the patient's sitting in a chair, you can like scan over a diagram of their teeth, and it'll show tooth by tooth what the history is on that particular tooth. So, that's beautiful. It's really nice interface. But if you don't have that information within the correct fields in the practice management software, you're not gonna be able to use that utility. So, I think that's part of the kind of ROI comes from getting that information, accessing the information, and making sure your team's using it on the front end and while the patient's in the chair.
So benefits re-verification. I'm sure most practices are not looking forward to this come January, but do you have any tips and tricks in terms of re-verifications and how to make that process a little less stressful?
Yes. So this is something that everyone dreads. Beginning of the year, every plan, every group has to be re-verified. And so you're just sometimes you're just kind of doing a basic and running with what you got until you can get caught up on it. But it's a lot. Something that I'd want, I suggest that you make sure that you're doing from an efficiency standpoint. And this is something when we provide benefit resources to our clients, this is something we do diligently, and that is making sure that the when you verify. So let's say 2023 is rolling around. Every single group and plan that we verify that benefit information on, we're going to hold on to that general information, not the patient specific, HIPAA information, none of that. What I'm referring to is what those, the basic, the percentages and coverages, as well as some of the specific codes. And some practice management softwares, for example, like Open Dental, you can go in and you can update those benefits for that specific plan, not just on a patient, but within kind of their database. So why is this important? Well, the next time that you get a patient on this exact plan and group, then you're able to do what we call just a partial, because you already have that benefit information on that plan for this year. So then you can go and just do an eligibility and a history, to make sure that the patient does have coverage, and then do the history to find out what's been used. But you're not going to have to spend that time on those long phone calls again. And so that's really an efficiency. Unfortunately, a lot of dental offices, multi-site offices as well, they don't have a cloud shared database. And so if you do have the ability to share them across your offices, that's also another efficiency, right? So even if it's, the office, one office did the verification of that group and plan, well, if that goes into a central database, then a second, the second office, even though they have not yet had a patient with that plan and group, they can access that same benefit information. And so that's something we do internally on our end as well, to really provide that efficiency, because it's really inefficient when you see the same offices verifying the same plans, over and over again, throughout the year. So I think that's something to really, if you're looking at the number, you're still going to have to do, at least one verification of every plan and group per year. I mean, there's no way around that.
Right.
But you're not, to try to avoid those being repeated. So that's what I suggest as well. Make sure you're very familiar with your practice management software and the capabilities on that. And if you're not certain and it's not clear, and get on the phone with your software providers and say, and make sure that you understand that component of it.
Right. It's really good advice. So coming up on the end of the year, obviously, what trends have you seen in terms of dental verifications over the last year? Anything that you think is interesting that's going to carry over? Love your thoughts on that.
Well, it's always, we're always anticipating, how significant the changes will be year to year. It's interesting it seemed like with COVID, a lot of the plans were not making huge changes. And so while we were, still needing to do all those verifications, at least 2021 into 2022, we found that a lot of the plans were pretty similar. That being said, most of the time that's not the case. And so I would anticipate now that, COVID's kind of done its thing and insurance plans are starting to kind of, I don't know, they've been busy. I'd anticipate that we're going to see some pretty significant changes on those. And at least from our perspective on, on the dental benefits verification side, we have seen an increase in inquiries of different companies looking for secondary vendors to help with the benefits management, which is, I think also during COVID, it was a little bit more quiet. We're also seeing that that's something that a lot of companies, especially multi-site offices, are looking into.
Makes sense. I think in a lot of areas we're starting to see, a lot of people did not go to the dentist for a year,
Right.
2 years. So I think offices are definitely a lot more busy than they were this time last year. So
Sure. Yeah. And there are staffing concerns. Definitely. I mean, most dental offices that we work with, they have just ongoing ads open for, for all the way from the front office to, hygienists. And so for us to be able to, to look and see where those resources are available, I think there's definite interest in that.
right. Absolutely. Any last marching orders, advice that you would give folks, that you would leave folks with as we wrap up?
Well, I mean, just in general, I think, your the way, how well trained your office staff is on the software and familiarity with how there's really a trickle down effect. If you're really clean on your front end, on your insurance verifications, on those kind of things, it ends up, going all the way downstream through the treatments and through the, the invoicing and payment on the back end. It reduces a lot of your outstanding claims. So, I think sometimes the doctors, I mean, they're there to take care of the patients and do their treatments.
Right.
And, the complexities of kind of the business side of it are a headache. That being said, like the investments in trying to focus on that, make sure that front end is being run smoothly and that the benefits are right and that the billing's right and the estimates are right. It really cleans up your back end. And so I think it's worth the investment. I'd encourage you to really, don't detach too much from the front end on that. Make sure that you're looking at where those losses are coming from. And most of the time, if you look at your outstanding claims and you go backwards, you can go see that it was something that wasn't covered or covered in a lesser amount, or, and that's stuff that was missed typically on the front end. So that would just be, my general advice is, that what's the phrase, a stitch in time saves 9, on the front end, if we get that, there's you avoid a lot of the back end write-offs and complications that, can sink a practice or make it, less profitable.
Yeah, it's a common thing, regardless of specialty in terms of billing. Very, very common.
And it's hard. Bless the dentist. I know they're there to help people and they get stuck with the bill mistakes, but so
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's all I've got for you today, Derek. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your patience during the technical little hiccup there.
We've all been there. We've all been there for sure. For sure. All right. Well, thanks everybody so much for your time. As always, if questions or anything come up, don't hesitate to reach out. And we hope to see you back here during our next session. Have a great evening, everybody.